Heat chamber hummed with translators and soft ventilation, a cathedral of glass and humming conduits suspended over a blue-white planet. The Veari delegation stood in a crescent around the holographic table. Humans formed a loose line on the opposite side. In the pause between speeches, she drifted closer, sleek silver skin catching the station light, pupils like vertical drops of ink. "Human?" she asked, head tilting with innocent wonder. "What is this hard thing on your body? Can I touch it?" A dozen conversations died mid-word. Elias Ward felt every gaze spear into his hip. His hand moved on reflex, covering the polymer grip of his service holster like a boy caught stealing bread. Heat punched his cheeks. The word touch echoed, bounced, bloomed into meanings it never deserved. The Veari murmured, soft, curious, scandalized. Somewhere a human aide coughed into a fist, fighting a laugh they'd regret. "It's, a sidearm," Elias managed, voice low, calm by training if not by temperature. "A weapon, not appropriate for touch." The young Veari researcher blinked, startled not by danger but by nuance. "Then I ask forgiveness. In my dialect, we say kehaseren for any rigid, attached implement. I intended no." She fluttered her fingers in the air, a Veari sign for shame caught too late. Counselor Raziel, the oldest of the alien diplomats, glided forward like a blade in a scabbard. "How very human," he purred in near-perfect trade tongue. "You strap violence to your bodies and bring it where trust should stand unclothed." Elias straightened, shoulders aligning with the habit of a decade. "Counselor, station protocols permit defensive carry for officers. And if curiosity had not asked, would you have told us?" Raziel cut in, gaze sliding past Elias to the young researcher. "Selari, step back." She obeyed, but not before her eyes flicked apologetically to Elias. He caught that glance, a quick burn of sincerity that looked like sunrise striking polished stone. There was no guile in it, just fascination and the sting of unintended offense. "Let's not turn a translation slip into a tribunal," Admiral Cade said from the human side, lacquered patience hanging off each word. "We're here to review the joint survey of the Barnard's loop anomaly, not to litigate holster etiquette." "Etiquette," Raziel repeated softly, the word changing shape in his mouth. "Yes. Let us review etiquette." A thin hollow of the anomaly blossomed above the table, filamentary light, red as a wound. The presentation resumed, but a chill had crept into the room and set up home between rows of spines and uniforms. Elias watched the data scroll and heard little of it, because his mind was snagged on the echo of Solari's question and the way she had leaned forward, close enough for him to see the faint bioluminescent freckles along her jaw. The Veari lit from within when curious. He'd learned that fact last month over tea with a physiology specialist. But the truth of it, seen up close, was gentler, warmer. When a German came, it did so with a polite clap of hands and claws. Delegations spilled into the corridor. Glass ribs, a view of the blue planet below, gravity tuned to a compromise neither species liked and both tolerated. Selari intercepted Elias outside the chamber door, her crest smoothed flat in apology. "I have given offense," she said without preamble. "I am still learning your connotations." "You didn't offend me," Elias said. "You startled some people, is all. Me included." Her gaze dropped to the holster again. "It is necessary to wear a weapon in a place of peace?" "It's not for peace," he said. "It's for certainty when peace fails. I don't draw unless I have to." He let a breath out, steadied the cadence. On the human homeworld, a tool at the hip used to mean you were working. It still means responsibility, to some of us. Solari's bioluminescence returned in a faint, thoughtful glow. "In mine, we leave tools in the wall until they are needed. Bodies should not bear the weight of fear." "Maybe we carry different weights," he said. He almost added, "and some of us carry them until we forget how to set them down," but that was a confession he owed no one. Raziel arrived like the sharp close of a door. "Selari," he murmured, gentle as frost, "a word." She stiffened, looked to Elias, then back to her counselor. "Yes, honored one." Raziel's smile made no journey to his eyes. You are assigned to spectroscopy, not human anatomy. Do not confuse curiosities. I was clarifying a term, she said quietly. Clarify in private, he replied. We will not be mocked here. His gaze touched Elias like a cool scalpel. Commander Ward, your protocols are your empire's business. Our perception of your choices is ours. Understood, Elias said. Raziel drifted away with 2 aides in tow. Cellari remained a heartbeat longer, caught between vectors. She drew her fingers together in the Veari sign for acknowledged, then turned to follow. Elias watched her leave and told himself that was the end of it. It wasn't. By the time he hit his office, a message waited. Cultural inquiry. Incident review at 1700. The word incident bit through his composure. He played the corridor footage out of morbid instinct, Cellari's question, his flustered cover, Raziel's knifed smile, and could already hear how a hostile summary would frame it. Human officer brings weapon into diplomatic forum. Veari Jr. harassed, trust compromised. He turned the screen dark and stared at his reflection in it. 32, eyes old enough for 40, uniform that looked better on recruitment posters than on a man who had slept 3 hours on a couch. A decade of telling himself peace was a job like any other that you could tick boxes and call safety into being. A decade of ignoring that safety had a face, a voice, a glow that lit up when curious.
His door chimed.
It slid open before he could answer. Cellari stood there with her palms open, the Veari posture of asking entry to a heart, not a room. I will be brief, she said. You have been summoned to explain. Raziel means to use my question to score a point. He knows I dislike being used. Elias stood, guilt and gratitude twinging the same muscle. You don't need to involve yourself. I already have, she said simply, crossing the threshold when he gestured. Her eyes flicked around the office. Neat surfaces, a potted fern that looked slightly baffled by a station light, a shelf of old paper books bound in cracked leather. She drifted to the shelf. These survived fire and vacuum to follow you here? They followed me through transfers and deployments, he said. Cheap paper. Unkillable. She traced a spine without touching. Our stories live in memory lattices. The words pulse when we call them, but I like that yours decay. She glanced back, that glow returning, the freckles along her jaw waking like first stars. Decay means someone cared enough to hold them. Silence pooled, warm rather than awkward. It surprised him how easy it was to be still with her in the room. Cellari, he said at last, softer than he meant, you don't have to defend me. I am not defending you, she said, half smiling with her eyes, a Veari trick that made them look like water catching wind. I am defending meaning. Words misfired. I intend to aim them again. He huffed a laugh despite everything. Careful. That's dangerously human. The research wing of the station was never meant for romance. White walls, humming conduits, holographic displays streaming with the pulse of 100 sensors, it smelled of coolant and discipline. Yet Elias found himself waiting there anyway, arms crossed, trying to look like he was simply early for duty. Cellari arrived almost silently, a shimmer of silver skin catching the sterile light. She carried a slate of crystal lattice samples, though the way she held them suggested her real cargo was nerves. I was told, she began softly, that you agreed to disarm for the summit. That's correct, Elias said. Holsters locked in a vault until further notice. Her eyes flickered, a faint glow along her jawline betraying relief. Then Raziel has one less weapon to aim at you. Elias allowed himself the smallest grin. Counselor Raziel doesn't need weapons. He's a weapon all by himself. Cellari tilted her head, considering the human idiom. You call a person a weapon? In Veari thought, a person may wield words or carry fear, but not be the blade. Humans have a habit of blurring lines like that, he admitted. She set her crystal slates down, then leaned against the console beside him, much closer than protocol allowed. Then blur one for me. Tell me why humans carry steel at their hips even when invited to peace. His jaw worked. He could have given the military answer. Deterrence, readiness, chain of command. Instead, something else came out. Because sometimes peace feels like a mask. We get so used to the mask slipping that we keep a reminder, something that says we're not helpless if it does. Solari's bioluminescence flared gently, her equivalent of widened eyes. That is loneliness, not security. The words pierced deeper than any of Raziel's barbs. Elias looked at her, and she didn't look away. For a breath, the sterile lab felt less like metal and more like candlelight. He cleared his throat. And what about you? You asked me about the holster like it was a toy. Why risk the shame of your counselor's wrath just to satisfy curiosity? Her crest rose, then flattened again. Veari body language caught between pride and humility. Because our histories paint your species as dangerous, hungry, quick to strike. But you, her voice softened, almost breaking into music. You carried that hard thing as though it weighed more than your bones. I wanted to know why. I wanted to know you. A silence stretched, full of possibility. Then the door slid open with a hiss. Raziel himself entered, accompanied by 2 aides. His gaze locked on Solari's nearness to Elias, and his jaw stiffened. Researcher Solari, he said, voice clipped. Your assignment was spectral analysis, not fraternization. Solari stepped back, hands folding at her waist, but her eyes stayed on Elias. Counselor, she said evenly, Commander Ward provides first-hand cultural clarification. It benefits the project. Raziel's lip curled. The project is science. Not, he stopped, claws twitching once against his robe. Not human entanglements. Elias kept his posture steady, though every instinct screamed to shield Solari from the counselor's scorn. With respect, sir, cultural clarity is part of the mission. Misunderstandings almost cost us yesterday. Better they're handled in a lab than a council chamber. Raziel's stare lingered, cold as vacuum. Then, with a flick of his crest, he turned away. Finish your analysis, Solari. And remember your loyalty. The aides followed him out, silence closing like a lid behind them. Solari exhaled slowly, shoulders loosening. He will not forgive me for that, she whispered. Then let him be angry at me, Elias said. I've carried worse. She turned to him then, glowing softly in defiance of her people's shadow. I asked once about the hard thing on your body. I think I've found another. It is not your weapon. It is the weight you refuse to set down. And before he could answer, she brushed her hand, not on the holster, not on the weapon, but on his bare forearm. Just a touch. Just long enough to tell him the distance between them had shrunk. The inquiry chamber was smaller than the grand hall, but the walls felt closer, heavier. The air itself seemed laced with suspicion. Elias stood before the hollow table while Raziel prowled its edge, his robes whispering like drawn blades. Solari sat to the side, her hands folded tight, the glow along her jaw dimmed to near dark. Raziel's voice was silk stretched over steel. Commander Ward, he began, it has reached this council's attention that you spend unmonitored hours with our researcher Solari. Explain. Elias kept his posture rigid. We've been working on cultural interpretation to prevent further misunderstandings. Misunderstandings, Raziel repeated with a sneer. Convenient word. What others call intimacy. The Veari aides murmured. On the human side, Admiral Cade's expression was carved stone, but his silence spoke volumes. You are walking a knife's edge, Elias. Solari rose suddenly. If there is fault, it is mine. I sought his counsel, not the reverse. My curiosity made me reckless, but it also prevented further insult in future dialogues. Raziel rounded on her, crest flaring crimson. You shame your lineage. You risk our standing for personal impulses. The chamber grew taut. Elias's fists clenched at his sides, but he forced them open. With respect, Counselor, punishing Solari for doing her job dishonors your people's commitment to truth. She asked questions. I answered. That's all. Raziel's eyes narrowed. You claim innocence. Yet whispers grow. Humans corrupt. Humans entangle. Soon there will be no research, only scandal. Elias swallowed the surge of anger. I've spent a decade carrying arms, so I wouldn't have to use them. If you want my truth, he set his palms flat on the hollow table. It's this. She reminded me peace is more than treaties. It's learning to trust curiosity. If that's corruption, then maybe corruption saves us. A hush followed, sharp and dangerous. The aides exchanged glances. Admiral Cade shifted, half ready to intervene. Cellari stepped forward, bioluminescence rising like dawn. "Counselor," she said, her voice steady, "I choose to stand beside him. His words are clumsy, his customs alien, but his intent is not conquest. It is care. I will not deny it." The admission cracked through the chamber like a seismic fault. To Elias, it felt like the room itself tilted toward peril. Raziel's face was carved fury. "Then know this, Cellari. You've chosen exile in spirit, if not yet in law. The council will remember." He turned, robes flaring, and strode out with his entourage, leaving silence heavy in his wake. Elias exhaled slowly, his shoulders slumping only once the door sealed. "You didn't have to do that." Cellari's glow flickered, softer now, tinged with sadness. "Yes, I did. You carry your weights in steel. I carry mine in defiance." For a long moment, neither spoke. Through the viewport, stars wheeled in their slow, eternal arcs. A peace so vast, it mocked the fragile kind inside the chamber. Elias finally said, voice rough, "Then we'll carry them together." Her eyes found his, luminous despite the threat hanging over them both. "Together," she echoed, though her voice trembled, not from doubt, but from the storm they both knew was coming.
The council chamber was packed beyond its design. Human officers lined one wall, Veari delegates the other. The air so charged it could have sparked. The hollow of the Barnard's Loop anomaly hung overhead, ignored, red light flickering like a wound that refused to close. Raziel took the center with a predator's ease. "Once again," he declared, "we are asked to believe humans bring peace while they smuggle violence beneath their skins. Their officer contaminates our young, coils trust into something intimate." Murmurs rippled through the alien delegation. Elias felt the words cut into him, but he stood still, spine straight, hands empty at his sides. He had left the holster locked away. His hip was bare. Yet suspicion weighed heavier than any steel. Admiral Cade started to rise, but Elias lifted a hand. "Let me speak." He stepped forward, the chamber's light falling hard across his face. "Raziel is right about one thing," he said, his voice firm. "I carried a weapon into these halls. I carried it because I thought peace was fragile, something I had to guard with metal. But what Cellari showed me is this. The hardest thing on my body isn't steel. It's the fear that I can't trust without armor." He paused, the silence swelling. Then, in a single motion, he lifted the holster he had brought only for this moment, empty, and laid it on the floor between the delegations. "If trust is to grow, let it start here. I disarm not because I am weak, but because I choose to believe in peace." The gesture cracked the tension. Humans shifted, uneasy but respectful. Veari delegates exchanged glances. The weight of symbolism was unmistakable. Then Cellari moved. She stepped into the circle beside him, crest high, bioluminescence glowing in full bloom. "And I speak for my people," she said, voice carrying clear, "to confess that our fear twists curiosity into shame. I asked a question with innocence. Raziel turned it into suspicion. But I will not let that moment be a weapon. I will let it be a bridge." Gasps, whispers, a rising murmur. Raziel's face darkened, his control slipping for the first time. "You disgrace your lineage, Cellari." "No," she said quietly. "I honor it. Truth is our lineage. Curiosity is our strength. And trust." She reached, openly, and took Elias's hand before the chamber. "Trust is the only future worth building." The silence that followed was vast, but different now. Not brittle, not poised to break, but trembling on the edge of something new. Cade rose slowly, gaze sweeping the room. "Then perhaps," he said, "we've learned more from this question than from all our scans of Barnard's Loop. Perhaps peace isn't written in treaties. It's written here, in choices like these. No one applauded. No banners unfurled. But the chamber did not fracture into riot. The storm held. And for a diplomatic council on the edge of collapse, that was its own kind of victory. Epilogue. Later, when the halls had emptied and the speeches dissolved into memory, Elias stood at the viewport with Cellari beside him. The planet turned below, clouds trailing like brushstrokes. "You risked everything," he murmured. "So did you," she answered. "But perhaps we risked nothing at all. Because what we found," she squeezed his hand, glow warming the cold air, "was worth more than fear." He looked at her, truly looked, and for the first time in years felt the weight slide from his chest. The hardest thing had been trust, and now, with her, it wasn't hard at all. Stars wheeled, the station hummed, and two figures, human and alien, stood side by side, no holsters, no masks, only the fragile strength of hearts laid bare.